Ghost of the Grand Oaks Hotel. Alex Harper prided himself on his efficiency. With a demanding job that often required last-minute travel, he had learned to make the best of any situation. When his latest business trip took him to a remote, picturesque town, he found himself in need of a place to stay. The Grand Oak Hotel, with its low rates and historic charm, seemed like the perfect choice. It was old-fashioned and a bit run down, but it was available. Upon arrival, the Grand Oak Hotel's appearance was both charming and eerie. The grand lobby, once a symbol of opulence, had fallen into a state of disrepair. The chandeliers, though still grand, were coated in dust, and the marble floor was scratched and worn. The air was thick with the musty scent of age, and the few staff members he saw moved with a certain unease. The receptionist, an elderly woman with a distant gaze, handed Alex the key with trembling hands. "Room 212, she said softly. It has its own character." Alex didn't think much of it. He took the key and ascended the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was dimly lit, with only a few flickering bulbs casting long, distorted shadows on the wallpaper. The worn carpets muffled his footsteps as he walked toward the end of the corridor, where room 212 awaited. The door to the room was slightly ajar, as though someone had just left in a hurry. Alex pushed it open and entered. The room was surprisingly spacious, with a large four-poster bed draped in an old-fashioned quilt and antique furniture that had clearly seen better days. Despite its faded grandeur, the room had an unsettling chill to it, which Alex attributed to the age of the building and the cool evening air. He unpacked and settled in, trying to ignore the odd feeling that crept over him. As he prepared for bed, the lights flickered sporadically, and a draft seemed to come from nowhere. He brushed it off, attributing it to the hotel's age and old wiring. However, when he started hearing muffled, disjointed noises that seemed to come from within the walls, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Around midnight, as he lay in bed, trying to ignore the creaking noises of the hotel, he was suddenly jolted awake by a soft, sorrowful sound. It was the unmistakable sound of someone sobbing, a heart-wrenching, mournful cry that seemed to resonate through the walls. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to ignore it, but the sobbing grew louder and more desperate, compelling him to investigate. Climbing out of bed, he followed the sound down the dark hallway, each step echoing eerily. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the shadows dancing around him as he approached the end of the hallway. There, he noticed a door leading to a section of the hotel that appeared abandoned. Gathering his courage, Alex pushed the door open and stepped into what seemed like a different era. The ballroom was frozen in time. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their once sparkling crystals now dull and coated with grime. The once elegant furniture was covered in white sheets, adding to the room's sense of neglect. The sobbing was louder now, and Alex's footsteps felt unnervingly loud in the silence. In the dim light, Alex saw her, a ghostly figure dressed in a vintage gown. She stood by a large, arched window, her back turned to him. The gown was of a style long out of fashion, and its fabric was tattered and worn. The figure's posture was one of deep sorrow, and as Alex approached, he felt a chill that seemed to seep into his very bones. The woman turned slowly, revealing a face that was both ethereal and haunting. Her eyes were hollow and filled with an endless sadness that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out, only the continued sobbing that filled the room with its mournful tone. Alex's breath caught in his throat as fear overwhelmed him. He took a step back, his legs feeling weak and unsteady. The ghostly woman's gaze followed him, and the cold in the room intensified. The sobbing grew louder, more desperate, as if pleading for something Alex couldn't understand. With a final, terrified glance at the specter, Alex turned and fled back to his room. The hallway seemed longer on his return, the shadows more oppressive. When he finally reached room 212, he found it colder than before. The temperature had dropped dramatically, and he could see his breath in the air. The sobbing continued, echoing through the walls, making sleep impossible. Unable to bear the terror any longer, Alex decided to check out early. At the reception desk, the elderly woman from the previous night greeted him with a knowing look. "Did you see her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Confused, Alex asked what she meant. The woman's eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation as she explained. Many years ago, a young woman had stayed at the Grand Oak Hotel. She was known for her beauty and grace, but her life ended tragically in the ballroom. The exact details were murky, but it was said that she had been involved in a scandal that led to her untimely death. Her spirit, unable to find peace, was said to wander the hotel, mourning her fate. Alex left the Grand Oak Hotel with a shiver running down his spine, unable to shake the image of the ghostly woman and her mournful cries. As he drove away, he looked back at the old building, now standing in the pale morning light. The Grand Oak Hotel remained as it had always been, silent and eerie, with its haunted past lingering like a shadow over its faded grandeur. Some stories, Alex realized, refuse to stay buried, and some places are haunted not just by spirits, but by the tragedies they leave behind. If you love this chilling story and want more mystery and horror, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and stay spooky.